So I just posted my first poem to YouTube. It's not the first poem I've written, but obviously the first one that I've posted. And I thought that I'd talk about it. I've been into poetry for years and years and years and years. I found my love of poetry well before I found my love of literature, even, which I think is a little bit odd. I feel like it's the other way around for most people, but I actually got into poetry. I think when I was like, I don't know, when I was like 13 years old, I got into like classical poetry, which might seem kind of weird, but I went down this crazy rabbit hole for months. And embarrassingly enough, what started it was there was years and years ago, there's a trailer for Gears of War 2 set to the poem of I Have a Rendezvous with Death by Alan Seeger. And it's chopped up. The full poem isn't even in the trailer, but that line is. And when I was a kid, I thought that went so hard. I thought that it was just the coolest thing ever. And it honestly might be like the catalyst of what sparked my love of literature in general, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but is what it is. Can't change your story. So yeah, I've ever since then I've been completely enthralled, by poets like really more like that are into like the more formalist side of things, like Thoreau or Longfellow or Emerson. I've read multiple volumes by each and many more cover to cover. When my sister was in college and I was on my second deployment, I went through her like poetry textbook cover to cover because she hated it, but I thought it was fascinating. And there's a lot of stuff about poetry that I really don't understand, specifically like in the realm of contemporary poetry, and that might just be because I'm not super inundated with like the culture of contemporary poetry. I tried actually when I first moved up to Seattle. Not my thing. Not my thing. I don't think that there's anything wrong with the more 21st century freeform, absent of structure narratives that don't really bear any semblance of rhythm. It's just not for me. And I have been crucified for saying that by a lot of people who I guess presumably know a lot more about the subject than I do. Again, no formal education in this stuff. I just enjoy it. And, just like I've written, a couple books, I think it's kind of the natural progression of someone who enjoys an art is to attempt it themselves. So, and that's what I've done, which is, again, it's kind of this fun experience that I think is a little bit unique. I've spent the past decade, pursuing all of these endeavors, and I don't actually even know if I'm good at them. Like it's kind of hard because a lot of people could even argue that it's not possible to be good at poetry. I don't think that anyone worth their stock actually makes that argument, but there's just such a fluid metric of objective value when it comes to like stuff like that it's really hard to tell if you are or are not. And because of that, like I just the guys that I hang out with, and the dudes that have been around for the past decade, they're not really into all this stuff. So I've just kind of been by myself, and therefore I don't know if I have any talent, which is, it's kind of a weird thing. I'm super into drawing, and it's easy to understand kind of where I am on the level of technical proficiency with drawing because, it's very visually apparent. But with stuff like this, I don't know. Don't even really know if I'm any good, but I really enjoy doing it, and it's fun. So I have written a couple dozen poems at this point. And, you know, if this is received well, maybe I'll post a couple more. I don't know. Like I said, we're just having fun. You know, this is all part of the process, publishing my books. But the poem itself, it's called Isolation, and I wrote it. I don't even know how long ago I wrote it. It was years ago, but we just gotten back from a trip, and it's a fun one. It obviously follows very specific patterns. It's a more formalist poem. You know, it's what I enjoy reading, and therefore it's what I enjoy writing. And, you know, we have kind of our two protagonists, you know, the oak and the humble tree. And the common thing that it's meant to explore is the need to have people around you that understand your plight. It just makes life so much easier. And so we start the poem with, you know, the lonesome oak atop a hill, and, you know, it's just a brief description of who he is, and, you know, he's isolated. The lonesome oak, starting over myself. And I wanted to capture, you know, strength within him, and you kind of need to be. You need to be strong when you're by yourself, when you're isolated, when you don't have people around you. And then, you know, we move stanzas to the humble tree within the wood. I don't even prescribe what kind of tree he is, because in my mind, as the author, it doesn't really matter. You know, he is a protagonist, this humble tree, but, you know, I don't even capitalize his name anywhere in the journals that I've written this, because I don't really think of him as needing, you know, that level of kind of pronoun. I think it's just the entire point behind him is he is the same as everybody around him. And, you know, he's not particularly strong, tall. He is just the humble tree within the wood. And one of his defining qualities, his defining quality within this narrative, is that he's surrounded by his friends. We move on later into the poem, and we see the oak, you know, in my mind, kind of posing and showing off to what I would imagine is people, you know. I kind of see this as taking place as this hill is maybe overlooking a village, and this tree is, I don't know, just known by the villagers, and sometimes they come to admire him, and, you know, he likes it. He enjoys being admired by these people. But that's, I think, kind of one of the things that I really wanted this to capture, is that adoration is kind of false and hollow from, we're going to say, people that don't have the capacity to even understand what they're admiring. That's kind of what I was going for when I was writing it. You know, sometimes human beings can be as different from each other, as different to each other as we are to even a tree. That might be a little bit pretentious, but, you know, it's kind of where I was at. But, you know, it'll still feel good. You know, any level of admiration does, you know, feel pleasant at times. We then move on to the humble tree among his brothers, who did not heed the voice of others. You know, in my mind, it's just, again, it wouldn't have mattered to the humble tree within the wood. The opinions of the people that he cares about are the people around him, that know him, that drink his water, that are from his home, that are always by his side, they see the scars that have made him wry. So that's just kind of, again, I feel like I'm not being articulate at all in my explanation of this. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but we're halfway through, so I might as well finish. It ends with, the oak by himself, a kind of sad lament when the people come. They cut his branches and carve his skin. And then in my mind, we just have a tree in the woods that maybe no one's even ever seen. But he eventually falls, as all living things do. And again, in my head, there's just him falling and all of these others standing around him, even perhaps, breaking and cushioning him as he falls to the forest floor. And there he can kind of lie with dignity. He's not dragged away and his carcass isn't used for something else. He can sit there, decompose, and, give to the forest around him. Again, that might be a super pretentious take. But I feel like, when I didn't enjoy poetry, it was because, we were having to go through stanza by stanza and prescribe, meaning. I don't think that... I think that someone could surmise the meaning behind this narrative pretty easily without me sitting here and fumbling over words about it. At least that was my intention. I've been critiqued multiple times by people that are, I guess, way more knowledgeable about this stuff than I am, about how most of my work doesn't give insight to my emotional well-being enough. And it's true, most of the time it doesn't. I almost never write about myself, just because I've just never felt the need to. I don't really hide a whole lot of my meaning, specifically within my rhythmic narratives, behind a whole lot of layers. I like it to kind of be surface value. I just want it to be kind of simple. I think that that's one of the beauties behind formalism and more classical poetry, is that, it doesn't need to be earth-shaking or super hard, both in material and the way that it is grasped, or dealing with super hard subjects. I mean, one of my favorite poems ever is only 2 stanzas by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, called The Arrow and the Song. And it's just a great, beautiful little poem about friendship. And I think that that's super, super cool. I think that it's fun. And I love the structure behind this art that kind of lets it ring. It's almost like a song. Again, I am not the preeminent expert on poetry. I'm just not. I'm just a dude that likes to draw and write stories, but I love reading poetry. I love it so much, and somehow that kind of evolved into me writing a couple of my own. So yeah, that's a really poor explanation of isolation. Maybe when I've had more time to think and project a really refined commentary to you guys, I will do so if anybody wants that. Again, I really don't think it's necessary. I don't think that this is a crazy hard thing to grasp. It was just me, humming to myself and rhyming. But as always, thanks for listening.